Well, good evening. Hello, everyone. This is Lee Love, and I am your photo mentor for this evening. Turn this down over here. Sorry about that. Every Friday night at 9 p.m., we do this show and help you guys. The purpose of this show, if this is your first time here, first of all, we're thrilled that you join us. But if this is your first time, the purpose of this show is to educate, entertain, encourage, and mentor you as a photographer and a creative, and hopefully you'll get something out of that. We do this, like I said, every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Tonight we're not doing Facebook. We're trying something a little different. We're only doing YouTube and LinkedIn, trying to see if we can improve the performance of the responses and some things like that. So if you have a comment, we'd love to hear it. Leave it in the comments there on Facebook or on YouTube. Tonight we are doing a topic that I think you guys will enjoy. I know it's one of the ones that shows up very often as far as one of the top 4 items that people ask about, and that is basically post-processing. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about Lightroom, talk about image management, kind of how you organize your images, maybe a little bit of workflow, how to import your images, talk a little bit about how to make them pop a little bit, make them a little more, more the way you really want them to appear and that you see them in your own mind as opposed to the way they may be in reality. Exporting, a little bit, we'll talk a little bit about exporting, and of course, always your questions live here anytime. So anyway, before we get started, I also wanted to remind you guys that the first Friday of the month we do photo reviews here. So if you're interested in submitting your work to be reviewed, have us give you some professional feedback on it. It's all anonymous, any camera, any iPhone, whatever. Any skill levels, not required that you be a pro or anything like that. So love to have you join us on that. And that is on the first Friday of the month. And also, if you're on social media and you want to follow us on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that, we'd love to have you. We keep that updated during the week with new information and certainly follow you back. And of course, always would appreciate that you follow us, like us, share, and mainly share this with other people that you think, other photographers that you think would be interested in looking for some help in growing. My goal is to help you grow creatively and also achieve your goals in whatever that may be regarding photography. So anyway. So again, let's get into a little bit. We'll dive right in. If you have questions, feel free to drop those in the YouTube channel there, and we will get those to you. And be glad to comment on those. And a good evening to Sue Ann, who, if you guys don't know, Sue Ann is an amazing writer and someone I'm proud to call a friend. And also is my content manager, and so she actually turns my words into something people can understand. They're not just babbling like I'm doing now. So anyway, all right. So let's see here. Let's go. Let's see if I got these buttons pushed right. Okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about again is image management. So let me kind of describe for you, if you're not familiar, if you're new to Lightroom. If you're new to Lightroom, I'm sorry, I got to laugh here. This is funny. So Allie jumped in. Hello, Allie Nova. How you doing, girl? Allie jumped in and said she was sorry she was late. She was watching old episodes. I guess that'd be considered reruns, wouldn't it? Anyway, hey, Allie, you can join us anytime you want. That's fine with us. Late, early, whatever. So anyway, so one of the things, this is a question I get from a lot of people. I would say when I ask the question, what are the issues that you're struggling with? I would say that post-processing and is probably definitely in the top 4 items. So I thought I'd just touch on that a little bit tonight. This is not going to be a course. I'm working on that though for our members of the Photo Mentor Academy. And if you're interested in that, you can jump over there and learn more about that. But this is just kind of just to kind of get your feet wet a little bit. So post-processing is a major aspect of your photography, because the way I describe it is it really is what the negative is something, or the image is, when I capture it, is only part of the process, maybe only 50% of the process. For me, the post-processing is something that I use to convey my feelings, my emotions about an image. So a lot of times I'll look at an image I've taken, and there's something about it that I know that there's something there I want to say, but I'm not always sure what that is. And so the post-processing allows me to do that. It could be heavily post-processed, could be compositing with Photoshop and really coming up with a conceptual photo, or it might just be tweaking a little bit, just to kind of maybe boost the colors here or there, sharpening or whatever. So that is kind of why I think post-processing is important. The other aspect of it is it lets you manage your images. Now, a lot of people, I see them groups and things like that, are like, oh, you got to learn Photoshop. You got to learn Photoshop. Well, look, Photoshop's a fine product, but it can and many times is way over the top. I describe it as killing an ant with a hammer. You don't need Photoshop to do a lot of things you can do with Lightroom. One of the beauties of Lightroom is that you can administer and manage multiple images at the same time. So, for example, if you are, you have maybe done a shot of a wedding or portrait session or something, and so you want your color balance, your white balance is off a little bit, and you want to adjust 10 images, you can highlight all 10 images, and I'll show you that in a minute, and adjust those just by hitting one button, and all of those will now be corrected. So with Photoshop, it's more of a one image at a time. There are some tools called Bridge and some things like that you can use, but for the most part, it's really meant to be editing one image at a time. So that's the first difference between Lightroom and Photoshop. So if you're interested, the other difference is that Lightroom is non-destructive, and I'll try and remember to show you that as well. What that means is when I go in and bring up an image and say, I think, well, maybe I want to make it black and white, let's see what it looks like, it doesn't actually ever touch the original RAW or JPEG file. What it's doing is it's creating in the database called a catalog, it's creating a set of instructions that are applied to that image when you export it. So the nice thing is you really always have your original image. You can always go back to that, hit reset, takes you right back to where you came from before. So I'll try and remember to show you that as well. So the other thing is that its strength is in managing images. So in my catalog, I have well over 250,000 images that I manage that are not necessarily online, what we call nearline. They're available, but I know where they are. Lightroom knows where they are, knows what disk system they're on, but I don't need direct access to them. And I can also search those images by keyword, or by location, or the camera I shot them with, or the lens I shot them with. So that's really one of the beauties of Lightroom, is it lets you manage the images, and that's referred to as a digital asset manager. You'll hear that term talked about. So that's another great thing about Lightroom and a system like that, is it lets you manage the images as well. So I tell you what, let's see if I can hop over here. Okay, so all right, so this is my girl here. It's my daughter. Her name is Djibouti, but we're going to talk about. So let's talk a little bit about image management first. So the way Lightroom works is you have a library here, okay? And if you look over here in the up in the right hand corner, I think this is the way I have this set up. Let's see here. You can, let's see, I think I can turn this on. There we go. So if I put this over here, I think it'll show you what it is. Okay, so over here you have, and I've turned off a lot of items, or you can set up a menu item to more items here. There's maps and a bunch of other features. I've got those turned off for the sake of demonstration. And the only three that I have set up right now are library, develop, and print. And so their concept is the workflow is very much like you would in a darkroom. So you have your library. I can look at all my images right now. This catalog, I just did a temporary catalog, has 14 images in it. I can come in here and look at all of those images that I brought into the system, and I can adjust them. I can manipulate them in any way I want. So that's the library. I can also in here, this is where I can keyword them. So let's say I want to pick, you know, I know this person here in this photo is my buddy James. So we'll come over here to, let's not do debug, to keywords. And if I want, I could come in here and add a keyword list. So I could come in here and put in James. Oops. Let's see here. Enter keywords. Yep. Sorry about this. This is okay. There we go. So I can put in James. Okay, with this photo right here. And so now, if you look, it goes away. But when I click on this photo, it shows me that James's name is in here. And I can search on that same keyword. So I know this photo was taken in Virginia. Okay. And so there. And if I want, I can actually go in here. I won't go into too much detail because it gets too geeky. But I can also go in here and look and see what camera it was shot with. I can look here at the metadata and find out what camera this was shot with. Sorry. So the pop-up thing's a little annoying. Okay. So that camera, this image was shot on December 17th. It's a raw image. You can look at the resolution, then the settings, what lens it was shot with, the Nikon D800, the serial number, etc., etc. So I can not only look at the image, I can also not only manipulate the image, but I can also search and say, show me all the images by a D810, show me the ones that were shot with a D850, what the date and things like that are. So the point is, of all of that, it gives you a lot of power to sort, search, and manipulate your images. Now, you wouldn't do this probably with every image, but what you'll find is if you start entering this information now, when you start importing images, then it'll be a lot easier later on. And of course, you know, if you're shooting nature or birds or something like that, maybe you want to tag the animal's type or name or something like that. So anyway, okay, so here's our library module. Here's where I can manipulate the images. I can make the thumbnail smaller or larger, whatever I want to do. So I can also come over here and look at where they're stored. Now, let me make a point here that's important to point out. The myth that a lot of people have about Lightroom is that when you have this thing called a catalog, and people think that the images are stored in the catalog. That is not correct. The catalog is really just a database, and all it does is keep track of the settings that you have. It keeps track of the locations of the files, the metadata, and some things like that when you import an image. It does not actually keep the image in the catalog, just the location of where the image is stored. So that means that your structure of where your files are on your hard drive can be the same system you already have. In fact, a lot of times you already have images, right? And you want to be able to add those images, but you don't want to change them. In a minute, when I get into importing, I'll show you how that works. But the thing I want you to remember is the catalog is just a database that stores information. It's not a very big file typically, and it stores information about the images, not the actual images. So you can tell that by coming over here. If I go to this hard drive and I look over into 2019, oops, it helps if I go back, sorry. Got to remember to do that. Okay. So if you look over here in the catalog, this on 2019, this is actually the directory. This is the same structure that the disk has. I'll show you in a minute when we import, where I'm going to import them to. But this is just a standard disk system that you have with Windows or Macintosh, and so there's nothing fancy about that there. So anyways, the point is this allows you to organize your images, find them, track them, which is really a great tool to have. Okay, so I'll minimize this here so it gets a little smaller. Won't go into these issues right now. Okay, so if I want to look at all my images here, I can do this by going to these folders, or I can this was shot in 2021. This is shot in 2019. But if I go up to catalog, I can also say show me all images, and that will show me everything. Okay, again, questions. If you guys have questions on this thing, stop me here and ask, because I know I'm throwing a lot out at you, but I want to make sure that we don't go too far and you guys get lost. So image management is a big feature of Lightroom, and I could go into more detail on this, on how I do this, but for the most part, I think I've kind of touched on how you manage it. The other thing is how you import images, or how you get images into Lightroom, and I'll show you that next. Okay, so again, we're in our library over here, right? So now what I want to do is I want to bring in some new images. So the way you do that is you come over here to the import button down the lower left, and you select, guess what, import. Pretty tricky, huh? Okay, now here's a very important thing to understand about Lightroom. This is where a lot of people get lost. See if I can use my little drawing tool here. What happens is, in fact, I think I have a slide on this one. Okay, yeah. So what you want to know, what's important is that the way this works is over on the left-hand side. These are the This is where the images are coming from. And on the right-hand side, this is the image. This is where the images are going. So when you're importing, what you really want to keep in mind is the fact that your images are coming from here. So, okay, this is your source, and this is your destination. And a lot of times people get confused about this part. So, if I come over to my Lumix, okay, whoops, don't want to do that. I'm not used to using this pencil system. This is a new thing for me. Okay. And I say I want to look at my images. It'll say, oh, wait a minute, can't find any images. What do you mean I can't find? This will freak you out the first time you do this as well. So what happens here is if you have to go directly into the folder where those images are stored, okay, or what is a better solution is if you go here and you click on the drive or the name of the card itself and say include subfolders. And what that means is now everything below that folder will show up. So if you have a card or another hard drive you're importing images from, if you select include subfolders, you don't have to go into each folder to grab those images. It'll look every folder below that. So this is a photo shoot we did on Monday, I think it was, where we're videotaping a course for Photo Mentor Academy on lighting, outdoor lighting. And so this was, Adrian was shooting some behind the scenes stuff for us so we can show you how this works. So these are the photos that are on this card that he shot. There's also some video on here. You'll see these are MOVs. So for now, we're really only interested in, playing with some of the JPEGs. So here's how it works. If I want to import an image, I can select it up here, okay, or I can come down here to the folder where I'm looking at it, and I can select it there, and then I want to decide where it's going to go over here. So I'm going to put it on my Macintosh hard drive, which is a whole nother issue, by the way, where you store your images. You might want to go back. We'll try and remember to put a link in here. Maybe Sue Ann can make a note of that. To a link to the show that I did on management, disk management, and image management, and multiple drives, and how to store your images and things like that for protection, so you don't lose your images. So, but anyway, but for the sake of demonstration, I'm just going to put it over here on my local hard drive. Now, move this out of the way. If you look over here, guess what? I have my local hard drive. Okay, so this is just the same as every other system. Okay, and if I go into Mentor here, these are some folders that I can create to store my images. There's nothing fancy or nothing unique about Lightroom in the way it's putting the images. I can put them anywhere I want on my local hard drive or an external hard drive if I wanted. So this is where it gets confusing, because what happens is people will import their images and then they can't find them. So let me here's a note. Caution. Lightroom will default to your pictures folder on your local hard drive every time. So even if I import something over here into this Mentor folder, okay, the next time I import an image, it will try and put it in the pictures location. So what happens is when I do that, all of a sudden I can't find my images, because it's like, wait a minute, I know I put them here. Well, maybe I didn't note that. Maybe I actually didn't click on that over there. So let me go over this again. So what you're trying to do is you want to take your images over here. Okay, here's my card that I am importing images from, and here is my disk drive. Again, it's just a local Mac hard drive, and I can create a folder under Pictures. For the sake of this demonstration, I'll call it Mentor. And now I have these. So what's going to happen is the images, let's see if I can get a little better color here. The images are going to come from here over on this drive, and they're going to be put over on this drive. That's all that's really happening. Now, if you're not doing this, I see this question a lot, so let me address it real quickly. Kind of don't want to change the subject too much, but if you're connecting your camera to your computer via USB cable and you're downloading from your camera, that will work, but I don't recommend it. What I recommend, see if I have one here. Oops, probably just messed this up. Yep, I just unplugged. Oh, I unplugged a different cable. Okay. What I recommend is that you invest in a card reader, and a card reader will let you plug this into your camera or to your computer via USB port, and then you take your card out of your camera and you put it in the card reader, and I just leave this connected to the computer all the time, and you import your images using a card reader instead of connecting the camera. So why do I do that? Why do I recommend that? Number one, it's faster. These are much, much faster than reading from your camera. Number two, it doesn't drain the battery from your camera. Number three, it doesn't tie up your camera. You can pull the card out, put it in, take a new card, plug that in, and now go off and start shooting again. And also, I guess for a fourth item, it's nice to know that you still have a second card or additional card, and the images are still there, and you haven't processed them yet, maybe, And so if you do have a problem importing or some kind of an issue, you still have the card available, and you're not reusing the same card. You have a couple of cards, and that way, once you know the images have been processed, you've delivered them to your client or whatever you're going to do with them, then you can reformat the cards. But anyway, a card reader is something I highly recommend. Kind of a side note there. All right, let's go back to where we were. Okay. Okay, so we're taking our images over here from our Lumix card. It's a SD card. We're taking them, and oops, shouldn't have done that. Didn't like that at all. We're just going to take them over here from our card, and we're going to put them over here on where we want on the hard drive. Now, a couple other things to note here. Number one, I don't rename my images. Some people do. I don't particularly care to do that. I want to keep the original name and the original number. So why do I do that? I do that because if I want to find an image, then it's unique. That number is unique. And so if I rename to just a generic name, like, Bob's Portraits #1, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't relate to the actual card, the image that's on the card. So I keep the names the same. So if you notice here, this one here is PI 477202. So I would just keep that name the same. When I export it, I may change the name, but when I import it, I want to keep it to be the same name so it's unique. Okay. The other thing I want to mention to you that's important to do is up here under File Handling, there's a checkbox. And this checkbox is something that you want to keep an eye on. I just leave mine on all the time. And what it says is don't import suspected duplicates. So what that means is that if I have an image that I've already imported, okay, it won't import it again. It'll be grayed out, and I'll show you that here. I'll just show. I'll tell you what. We'll just take this picture here, and I'll just import this one here. Let's see, what is this one? Oh, it's James goofing around. What an unusual sight. Okay, so I'm going to import this image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it over here. I'm going to import it. I tell you what, let's just do another one here. Find one a little more interesting. I don't know if it's interesting, but it might be better. Okay, so we're going to import this image here. So the way it works is, again, let me just cancel this so you can see. I've selected import. Now I get this screen. I want to now it went back to the iPad. I don't want the iPad. I want to select the Lumix card, and I want to select, include subfolders, and I want to put it. Now I got to decide where I want that image to be transferred to, and so I want to put it over here on my destination, and I'm put it under Pictures, under Mentor. All right, now, and I've got up here, don't import suspected duplicates. I showed you that. Okay, the other thing that's going to happen is by default, it will automatically import them by date. So if you see here these 3 folders, more than 3 actually, but there's 2019, 2021, and it's automatically going to put them by date. But I can change this if I want. I could say by original folders, and it'll then create the same structure that's on the card, which I don't typically do. You could put it in one folder. So let's say I wanted to have a folder here called Travel or something like that. I could create a folder called Travel or the name of the project, or I do both. So up here I can select in folder Mentor, okay, and we'll call this tutorial or training. Again, these are videos that are going to be done for training. And now if you look what happens, it automatically is going to create a folder down here called training. It's going to import, there's 59 images it would import if I had decided to import all of them. which I'm not. And it would automatically put the date as well. So I will uncheck all. And now I will pick the one image that I want to import. Let's say we're going to do this one right here. And I'll say that one right there. And now if you look, it's going to show 1 out of 59 images. It's going to import that image. And away I go. And it's going to put it in the training folder. So we'll just import that image. Now, one last thing, or not last thing, but one other thing, is also you want to note up here, there are a couple of ways to import an image. You can copy it, you can move it, you can add it. Now, what does that mean? It means that normally you're going to copy it from a card. That's typically the best way you're going to do it. You'll copy it from a card, and you will then transfer it over to your hard drive, okay? That copying is the best way to do it because that keeps a copy still on the original card, and it's going to copy, obviously make a duplicate over on the hard drive. So that way you can double check it, make sure it's good before you actually erase your memory card. The only time, so that's the way, so typically you're going to do a copy. The only time you would typically do a move is if you're moving them from one hard drive or one location to another. Maybe you've got a smaller hard drive and you've upgraded to a bigger one. You could move them, but that's not really, this is not really the place to do that. I'm just going to point out that's how it could be done. Add is the other one. So add is the other item you'll use. So add happens when you're importing from an existing location. So normally I don't think it'll let you add from a memory card, which is good. And the reason is because if you take that memory card out, then you're going to not be able to access the images anymore. But let's say, for example, I'm going to take over here on this drive right here, got a bunch of files. So we'll say personal, I don't know what I've got, there we go, cat photos, more cat photos. So let's say I want to take a file from over here, but instead of copying it, I want to add it. Now, what's the difference? Or I want to move it. I don't. But what add does, add is a very important function because what it does not move the files. In other words, it just adds them to the catalog. So if you already have a whole, let's say this drive over here is full of images, and I want to plug it in, and I haven't been using Lightroom or any kind of management, and I want to add them to the catalog, then instead of actually copying them from one place on the hard drive to another place on the hard drive, which would duplicate the files and take twice the space, that makes no sense. Okay, so if you already have the files on a hard drive, then what you want to do is just add them to the catalog. And then it will just read those in, it'll know where they're located, and it will put them in the catalog and allow you to manipulate them and manage them no matter how you want. You can move them later on and things like that. So that's the difference between copy and add. Copy will take them off of a card, or not take them, will make a duplicate of the card and put them on your local hard drive. Add is typically used when you're trying to add existing files from a hard drive system to your catalog. You don't need to move them. They're already fine where they are. There's plenty of space. All you're doing is adding them to the catalog. So is that clear as mud? You guys are not asking any questions. I'm nervous when you don't ask any questions. That means I'm either really, really good, or you already know this stuff, or you don't care. That could be the other one. All right. So let's go back here. Okay, so we don't want to add on these images over here. We're going to copy, and we're not going to copy anything from the one hard drive. We're just going to take them from the memory card, and I'll leave this on so you can, and we're going to take one of these images and we're going to put it over here, this one right here. We're going to put it over in the mentor folder under the word training, and then you would just hit import. Okay. And so that's going to take it. It's actually going to make a copy of it. It's going to put it over into the catalog, and now I can edit it or manipulate it any way I want. Now, you'll also notice it gets kind of, sometimes you're like, wait a minute, you're messing around. Where'd all my images go? Well, over here on the left, you got to remember that what happens is, again, it defaults to previous import. So if you want to go back and see all your images, you got to go back up here and click on all photos. And now we have all the other the 14 images that were in there, and now this is our 15th image. Okay. All right. Okay, Allie, thanks. Allie says she's processing the information. That's good. I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot for you guys. I appreciate you hanging in there. And you know, we're going to go over this a lot, Allie, in the Photo Mentor Academy. I'm going to do a whole multiple modules on this. But I just kind of wanted to get, you guys were mentioning it in the consulting and the coaching call the other day, so I wanted to just touch on it. And hello, Tank, how are you? You know, I'm having trouble keeping up with you, girl. You might need some therapy here. I more schizophrenia than I have. It's crazy. You're funny. All right. Okay. So good. You're following real time. That's excellent. Okay. So if I'm going too slow or too fast, let me know. All right. So we've imported an image now, and I can manipulate it. I can do a bunch of things with it. There's one more thing I wanted to show you about. Exactly. About one more thing I wanted to show you about importing, because it's a really cool trick that a lot of people don't know about. Like, they don't use it much. Okay. So let's say, for example, let me go back here. Let's say, for example, we'll use this one image we already brought in. Let's say with this image right here, I tell you what, let's do this one instead. Okay, so here's an image right here, and let's say, for example, that we know with this camera that we're using that there's certain things I want to do. Now this one's a little underexposed, but so that's not something I'm going to show you. So I'm just going to bring this up. Let's just say that, for example, I always want to I like to have my texture brought up a little bit. I like to have the contrast bumped up just a little bit. Clarity, maybe. Maybe these are what you're going to find is these are settings you're going to do over and over. All right. And so you find, wow, and I'm going to my sharpening, and maybe I'm already doing sharpening this much, whatever it's going to. It doesn't matter right now. I'm going to go into this more detail. But what I'm trying to get to now, let's say you find you do these settings over and over and over again. What you want to do is you want to save this as a preset. Now, this is not a typical preset. So once you're in the develop module, okay, over here, then you can't do it if you're in the library module. You have to be in the develop module. But see, if it goes away over here, you don't have access to it anymore. But if you're in the develop module, you have this thing called presets. So what I do is I create a preset for the name of the camera that I'm using. So this one was done with a D850, okay? And I save those settings. The two settings I do not save are white balance and exposure. And the reason I don't do that is because every image is going to be a little bit different. Every image is going to have a little bit different white balance, maybe, and every image is definitely going to have a little bit of a difference in exposure. So I don't want these presets to manipulate those settings. I want them to do all the rest of the settings I change every time. And they're almost always the same because there's certain styles that we develop. So I create this, okay? Now, here's where I use that preset. I don't apply it really to the images per se. I go back into library. I say import. I go back to my card. Now, these weren't D850 images now that I think about it, but that's okay. All right. And let's say I'm going to import another image. we'll find, and so this is not going to be a good example, but, so we're going to uncheck all, check this one image. Okay, so now when I get ready to import over here, I'm going to put it in Mentor, same place, Training. Okay. What I want to do is apply during import. This is going to save you a ton of time. All right. Apply during import. And what you want to do is take the preset that you created for that particular camera. And now, Allie, this is a good one for you because you have multiple cameras. So your D850, or excuse me, your D500 is going to have different settings and different color traits than your Z7 will. So the color is going to be a little bit different. Even though you could have two cameras the same, there's going to be a little bit different. But in your situation, different sensors, a whole bunch of different color science is going to be different. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to create a profile or a preset for that particular camera. And here's the way I describe it. I describe it as learning the file. Okay? And here, so let me go back and remind and kind of show you what I'm talking about. When I say learning the file, I find there are certain attributes or settings I change every time over and over and over again. For example, on the D850, that's a 42, 45 megapixel camera. My D10 is 36 megapixels. I had a D2X at one time and a bunch of other cameras that were 12 megapixels. What I've discovered is the higher the resolution of the camera, the more sharpening you need to do. Now that doesn't make sense. I know it's counterintuitive, but it's true. So what you'll find is you'll want to adjust the sharpening higher on your Z7 than you will on your D500. And you'll find you're doing this every time over, and it's like, gosh, I'm doing this over and over. Well, instead of doing this across 10 images or 50 images or whatever, just create a preset for that camera with the base settings that you're going to use, and then when you go to do an import, you come down here and you, guess what? You say user presets D850. And what that does is that will, whoops, sorry, I didn't show you. I'll show you again here in a minute. What that does is it will apply those presets as it's importing the image. And that saves you a ton of time. And again, the reason I don't do white balance or exposure is because that's going to change from photo to photo or shoot to shoot. But the sharpening is going to be pretty much the same every time. The contrast is going to be pretty much the same. You're going to find there's certain attributes of those images that you like, that you want to make those adjustments over and over, and that's where you would create a preset. And then, as I said, what you do is you come over here and you apply that preset for each camera as you're importing those images. And that will save you a ton of time. So that's a huge tip. Again, this is not a D850, I forgot, but it's okay. So I would turn that on. I leave that on. The other thing I'm also tell you about is this thing here called Metadata copyright. So the other thing I do is I come in here and I have all my metadata in here. So well, I thought I did this. I guess this because this is not my regular setup here. But what you could do is I could come in here and I could put in my copyright. Okay, so it's going to be copyright Lee Love. I can put the status in here that it means it's copyrighted. The terms are going to be something like you know, contact for terms. You can put your name in here, your address in here, your phone number, your email, your website, everything in here. And then you save that. And then we'll call this LLP copyright. Oh, it's already used. Okay. I don't know why it didn't show up. Okay. So now what happens is when I come in here and before I import, I select this and I select the model of my camera. and it's going to automatically enter that information as it's importing the image. So if I'm importing 1,000 images, then guess what? All that work is already done on those 1,000 images. You can also add keywords here. I won't get into too much of detail here, but because this changes on every shoot, you can put them in manually. So again, I could put in James, or I could put in Virginia, or whatever, something generic in here if I wanted, and that will also get added to the image, to the metadata, and to the file when it's imported. So this alone will save you a huge amount. Let's see. So Tank says, let's see what she's saying here. Tank says, just camera type, or do you have specific adjustments for different lenses? That's a great question, Tank. The camera, I tell you what, let me save that for a second. We'll go into that in just a second now. Now we're going to go into develop. I'll show you how that works. You don't, here's the short answer, just for the camera type. Because what happens when you create the preset, here, let's see if I can go in here. Oh, cancel, develop, preset, manage. There's a bunch of them that are already in here, but you know, they're kind of lame. I'm not a big fan of buying presets and things like that, because I think you can create them yourself. Okay. This should let me edit this one. I'm gonna manage. Anyway, I'll tell you what happened. I thought maybe I should be able to enter this thing. Oh, here we go. I don't want to update it with the same settings. I actually want to edit it. Stump me on something here. Okay, I see what happens. All right, so what happens? If you look over here. Oh, I'm not sorry, wrong screen. Apologize. Okay, so let me show you what I did, because I was not on camera here. Okay, so if we go to develop, okay, and then over here on the left-hand side, you have your presets. Okay, I'll minimize this so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so you open up your presets, and you scroll down to your preset that you're going to work on. You right mouse click and you say update with current settings. And then what you would do, the reason you would do that, let's say for example that you've realized, and I do this all the time, I'll start with one set of settings, but then I'll realize, you know, I really do want, maybe it's a little too much contrast, or maybe they've got a new feature and I want to add a little bit of vibrance and a little saturation. I'll overdo it. Okay, so there's too much there, and maybe I want to bring it down a little bit. So maybe I find that I like that look for my images. So then what you do is when you come back over here and you right mouse click on this and you say update, it's going, and you look at these and you can say, yeah, I want to update with these settings, and you update it. It's now going to change or add this setting. But to answer your question about the lens, if you look over here under lens correction, okay, it will actually, there's a setting you can change to turn that on or off. So if you want that to do a correction every time, it will read the EXIF data from the camera and make that change for you. So you don't have to do anything. So I would say, yes, I want to do a lens correction on that. And I don't want white balance, I don't exposure, and so now it'll update it. So what happens is when I'm in develop, I'm also jump over here and show you how this works. Okay, detail, lens corrections. Okay, remove chromatic aberration, enable profile corrections. And if you look, it read this file. It read the raw file. It knew it was a Nikon lens. It knew it was a 105 macro that I was shooting with. it knew everything about the lens, and so it already makes that correction. So all you have to go again, just to go back again, you don't have to do it for the lens, because it will read this and make the correction automatically, as long as you have over here in your settings and your preset, as long as you have lens corrections checked. Now, obviously, if you uncheck that, it's not going to make any changes whatsoever. And so, if you turn that off, then you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, so that's what the lens correction tool is pretty cool, because every lens has a little bit of characteristics with it. So I'll show you here. Now, this lens is not very wide. You typically will see it more on a lens that's more a wide angle lens. But if I click on this, so look, you'll see what's going to happen here. See, it automatically made an adjustment because it knew. I don't know if you guys can tell or not. It's subtle, but here, if you look, this lens has a little bit of vignetting. See it going on there? Okay. So watch what happens when I tell it to correct for this lens. Okay, see, that went away. It minimized it considerably. So the way that works is it looks at the lens. There's still some of that there. It looked at the lens. It knew there was an issue there, and it corrected for it. Now you can also go into manual. I'm already gone into too much detail here for you guys, but you can also go in here and make some manual adjustments. This is really helpful if you're doing architecture and you've got, the image is a little bit crooked or things like that. See, here's my vignetting. See how the corners have gotten brighter when I turn this up? So if you have a lens that has an attribute problem or distortion, you can correct this here. Oh, I don't know if you guys know this or not. Here's another little trick. If you make an adjustment on any slider in Lightroom and you want to go back to 0, instead of trying to do this and get it back to 0, just double click on the name and it'll reset it. So see, now if I make this 100, 190 and I double check on it, it'll bring it back to 0. And that works on any setting in Lightroom. So so if I go back to the exposure, because trying to monkey with these, this is set up at 0.95. So if I double click on exposure, whoops, wrong one, it'll make it 0. Okay, so that's a handy little tip there. Hopefully that answered your question, Tank, about the lens correction. Okay, wow. We got a lot of stuff here to cover. I'm going to try and move on. All right, let's move on to with a little bit here of the instead of just doing importing, let's go into a little more on the processing side. Okay, so because I think that's probably something you guys would benefit from. All right, so here's a before and after image, by the way. All right, let's go back to develop. Whoops. Why am I not seeing this image here? Oh, all right. So one nice thing, remember I mentioned to you guys about you can do, the nice thing about this is it never touches your original image. So if I come over here to the reset button, whoops, I'm doing it again, aren't I? I have tally lights on these things and everything so I can tell what I'm doing, but I don't pay attention to them. Okay, so if I come over here to the reset button, okay, I can come over here and I can actually just reset this image to just like it came out of the camera. So even if I had a preset applied to it, so let's say I'm going to come over here and make this one black and white, okay, just by clicking one button. It's like, I don't really want to mess with that. I want to go back and make it color. So what happens is any adjustment you make, okay, you can just hit reset and it'll bring it back to normal. That's or to original. The nice thing is, again, this is not touching the original image. Even though I make these changes, they're just settings that are stored in the Lightroom catalog. They're not actually touching the file. Your raw file is always going to be untouched, which is great. Okay, so a couple things I look at. Here's the way I would go about looking at an image and give you some tips on how I would post-process an image. First thing is I would look at the composition. Okay, is it really, what's the composition look like? So if you click on this square up here in the corner, then I can come over here and I can crop the image if I think it needs to be cropped. Okay, something like that, you know, whatever. And so I can set that up. This makes it a little more interesting. If you notice, now it's kind of like a little better use of rule of thirds. Okay, I don't want to cut off her whisker. So that's that. If I need straightening, again, I can just grab a corner or piece of it here and rotate a little bit. All right, that's nice there. You can fix that. So that's the first thing I do, is I look there to see, is the composition correct. The next thing I would do is I would look to see what the exposure looks like. Now up here we have something called a histogram, and I know a lot of people don't seem to use this for some reason. I don't know why, but this histogram up here is very, very useful, and this tells you what's going on with your exposure. So if you look over, the way it works is everything over on the far left is pure black, everything on the far right is pure white. Now, did you guys notice that there's a little bit, I don't know if you guys noticed or not, there's a little bit of weirdness going on in her eye? What that is this is over here, this is turned on, and this is showing me that everything that's turning blue has no detail in it. It's pure black. And everything that's over here that's on the far right is pure white, has no detail. So if let's see if I bring the exposure up. See, now it's turning red. So what that's showing me is that the red shows me that there's no detail in that whites, and the black shows me there's no detail in the darks. And the kind of weird looking. I don't want to. All right. So I double click on that. So I want to look at this histogram and kind of put her somewhere in the middle on this particular image. So about right there, maybe. That looks pretty good. I'm not blowing out the whites. You know, if I went too far, I could see that's a little maybe too white because it's over here. And these numbers, by the way, if you're familiar with this is 0 on the left and 255 on the right. So I want to bring this down just, so that's like a stop and a half. That's probably too much. So I'd probably bring this exposure down about right here. Okay. Now, that's the first thing I'd set. Now, if you look, by the way, this is set up on purpose this way. These are in an order that you want to do these adjustments, because this is how. So you want your sharpening, for example, and your effects to be almost the last thing you do the image. You don't want to do it first, because then you get these artifacts in this weird looking image. So you do your exposure and stuff first, and that's why they're set up this way. Now I think you can actually move these around. I'm not saying you. I thought you'd be able. I thought you could move these. Maybe not. Okay. Anyway. So that's why the basic is up front and detail and everything's down here below. So you're moving down this list. Okay? So that's the first thing I want to do. The next thing I may want to do is white balance. Now this is pretty good white balance, but the way you can tell is if you take this eyedropper and you move it over something that's white and you look down at the numbers. Can you guys see those numbers underneath? So if it's 80 is the red. The G underneath that grid is 78, and 75 is the blue. So theoretically, if it's pure white, those should all be about the same. Okay? So you can see that actually if you wanted to make this accurate, there's a little bit, not enough blue and a little bit too much red. So if you click on it, that may make it accurate. Let's see if that looks like now. Okay. Yeah, so now they're pretty much even. Now here's the problem with that. I think it looks like crap. So that's the problem with white balance, in my opinion, or post-processing, is it may be accurate, but you may not like the way it looks. It looks too sterile to me. So to me, I could turn up the color and I could, but I don't like it. I'm going to go and reset it. It's shot at 2700 is the Kelvin, but maybe, but the thing is I could warm it up more. I could cool it off a little bit more. So I can make, this is the next adjustment I would make, is to decide how I want this image to convey what I'm trying to say emotionally. Also, I should mention, if you look at the histogram up here, let me do this white balance again. Whoops. Okay. You can see the blue here has been adjusted in the yellow. And so it kind of also gives you an indication of what's going on. So anyway, so that's the next thing I would adjust is the white balance. I can tell we're going to go late tonight. Hope you guys don't mind. Okay. And so forth and so on. So I would adjust my contrast next. Contrast also affects your color and your sharpening. But if you want your images to pop a little bit, crank that contrast up a little bit, just a little bit. So if you make it less, so you have less color, but look what happens to the color when you kind of crank it up. So I always like to kind of bump up that contrast just a little bit. Highlights look fine. Highlights is typically a situation where your whites are blown out. If your shadows are too dark, you can bring those up. So I'll make these adjustments here. And again, it's very, very personal. If you notice when I do a photo review, I rarely talk about these settings. And the reason is it's up to you. I may talk about composition. I may talk about the technical characteristics of the image, and I may talk about the storytelling, but the post-processing is going to be entirely up to you. It's going to be how you want it to look. So that's why I rarely discuss that when doing a photo review. Clarity is going to make it a little sharper in the mid-tones, so I may punch up that a little bit. Texture is a new control they have. And I almost will always turn up the saturation. I like a little bit of punchy color on mine. So again, it's going to depend on the camera and what the image is. So there's kind of where I would start. I could probably stop there, except the next thing I would want to do if I did nothing else was to go back and look at the sharpening. I'm going to show you a couple of quick tips here. This is kind of things that will be helpful. So it's helpful if you find a spot in here and you zoom in and you do your sharpening there, because you can get a little more detail. So you could overdo it. And what happens is if you overdo it, you start getting these artifacts. Not too much on here, but you'll see that it really starts looking like halos. But here's the tip I want to give you. Sharpening really only needs to be on certain areas and on the edges of an image. So again, let me say it again. Sharpening really only affects the edges of an image, and you really don't want to sharpen the entire image. Now, there may be times you want to do it, but for the most part, I would say 90% of the time, I never sharpen the whole image. What I do is I want to sharpen what I want to draw the viewers to. So, for example, looking at this image here, I don't care about sharpening this fuzzy stuff over here in the background. I don't care about sharpening this down here on the left. I really want, what is the most important thing? Her eyes. So I would come up here with a brush, and I would come up here to sharpness, and I would come over here, and I would go down here, and I would click on, it's 0, and I would make that sharp. And then I would start to paint on this part of the image. Okay. I want to sharpen her eyes and maybe her nose. So when I'm doing a portrait of a person, I'm typically only sharpening their eyes and maybe their hair a little bit. But I don't care about it. See, this stuff's already out of focus. I don't want to try and sharpen something that's out of focus. And if you click over down here at the bottom, you can see where I've actually painted. And and here, okay, that is where the sharpening is going to take effect. All right. And then I can come down here and adjust the sharpening. Now, here's the trick I was going to show you. Let's see if you can do it on this one. So it won't do it on this particular item. But anyway, so I'll show you here in a second. So that's the way. I also may want to, if it's you can do more than one thing, by the way. If you click on sharpening, you can still make an adjustment. So maybe I want to brighten. See, right there, I can kind of bump up the brightness a little bit on her eyes. So if I turn that on or off, let's see here. You guys can see what that looks like. That's off. That's on. That's, whoops. That's on. That's off. To me, it's subtle. Okay, maybe a little too much actually on the brightness. But you see the difference when you do something like that. Is also, by the way, you can click here, and when you highlight it, you can do the down arrow or the up arrow, which will make it a little more precise. But anyway, so again, I'm trying to draw the attention to the subject, and so I will almost always sharpen the eyes and maybe punch up the color or the exposure just a little bit on the face, because that's what I'm trying to draw the attention to. Now, so that's that. So the other thing I was going to show you about the sharpening, which I didn't get to, you can also sharpen the entire image. And if you can punch this up here and do the entire images. But what most people don't realize is there's a thing here called masking. Masking is a great tool. What you do is you hold the Option key down on a Mac or the Alt key down on Windows, and then you click on this masking little slider right here, okay? So I'm clicking on this right now. Then you slide it over while holding the Alt key and look what happens. Now, what this is doing is anything that's black will not be sharpened. The only things that are going to be sharpened are the things that are white. So if I take it all the way over to the right, I can take it back. So normally it's going to sharpen the entire image. I don't want it to sharpen the entire image. I really only want it to sharpen the edges. So I will bring the masking down to tell it only sharpen that part of the image. Okay? And that is a big help. And you can the other ones are you can kind of play with again on the sharpening, on whether how you want the sharpening to go as far as the detail and all that kind of stuff. That's going to be, again, a personal preference. Okay. All right. So real quickly, so I could go on and on about this. Maybe I'll just do one last thing I may want to do here is I may want to come down to effects. I might want to do some vignette. There's a vignetting. That's obviously too much. I would never do that. But I might want to do just a little bit. So instead of correcting the vignetting, I might want to use the vignetting to draw attention. And I can move that midpoint around and where I want it to be. I can change the feather or how soft it is. So if it's an image that I want to draw some attention to, but I don't want the vignetting to be too obvious, then I will maybe add a little bit of that to it. The other thing is you can do the other way. If you have an image that's white and you want to you can do it this way, which is kind of very old school looking, I would say. All right, so that's the other thing you could do, would be the vignetting. Okay. Other than that, I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff we could go into, but that's pretty much the basics that you want to do. All right. So the next thing I'm going to go real quick. This next thing, so I've really gone over for you guys. Appreciate you hanging in there. Is exporting. So I've got my image now. Now what? Okay. So now I'm done. Now I want to do something with the image, right? So what I want to do now is I want to export the image or create something. Oh, one last thing. Let me show you this real quick. The other thing you can do is you can create virtual copies. So let's say I wonder what this would look like in black and white. Maybe let's see what that looks like. So instead of messing with the work you've already done, you can just come over here and create a virtual copy. So I right mouse click on the image, create virtual copy. I'll click on that, and what that does is it creates a second version that I click on, and now I can go in here and say, let's see what that looks like in black and white. So I still have my original, and whoops, they're stacked here. I hate this. Got to unstack them. Unstack. Okay. So I've got this one, which is the original. Here's the one I worked on. Here's a black and white version. They're all the same image, and here's the cool part about it. It has not duplicated the image. It has not made 3 copies. So let's say this is a 20 megabyte file. There's not 60 megabytes worth of storage. It's the same image. All it did was create a set of adjustments and stored that in the catalog, so it takes up almost no disk space whatsoever. And so I can come in here in my black and white image if I want. I can play with this. Here you go into your sliders under black and white. I think I was showing this to Allie the other day. So the nice thing about this is it's like having filters. So I can adjust if, you know, different, what happens is different colors will respond differently to different filters in black and white. And so I can adjust these here just like if I was putting a filter in front of the lens, a black and white filter. And then once I see that, it's like, okay, hey, that's kind of cool. So let's see which one I like. I got my original one here. That looks pretty nice. I got a black and white one. I like them both. So maybe I want to do one of each. I also notice right there I have a spot on my sensor, I think. Oh, no, it's on my monitor. Okay, never mind. All right, anyway. So I could do this. I can go in and make a black and white one. You can also do color grade. This is very popular. People will go in. You can set all kinds of different. You can make a nice warm image or a cool image if you wanted. So you can create multiple versions of the image and play with it. And if I don't like it, guess what? I just hit the delete key and I can remove it. And what will happen is it will say remove photo. It'll prompt me. It'll say, hey, do you want to remove the virtual copy? So all this is doing is it's taking that virtual copy, not the original. The original is still there. I'm going to stack it now again. I think I did. Did I just miss? There we go. So it doesn't delete the original copy or touch the original file, just this duplicate or just this this virtual copy that I made. Okay, so now it's a great image. I want to export it. So the way I do it is I go over here to right click, export. Okay. Boy, I could spend a lot of time going on this right too. Okay, here's what the export screen looks like. Couple things that I recommend you do. Number one, I always come up and say choose folder useful for a preset. So in other words, what this means is when I say want to export, it's going to pop up a menu and ask me where I want to save it. Now, if you don't want to do that, if you just leave it normal, I think with the default, is it will find a folder and it will put them in the original folder or put them in a specific folder. So you could come in here and create a folder called finals or downloads or whatever you want to do, and it will always then export your images to that folder. The reason I don't do that is because I have so many clients and so many things I'm working with. I don't want them all to show up in one folder. I want them to be in a separate folder under that client's name and that date. So I want it to prompt me to tell me, to ask me where I want to put that. Okay, so that's the first thing I do. Next thing I do is I come down here and I have file renaming. Remember I mentioned I never rename the original. I only rename the exported version. So you can create multiple presets. This is another really nice feature. So the default one would be file name right like this. So it's going to keep it LLP 4429. Okay, that's the original file name, and it would just export it that way. Well, that's fine when I'm working on it in Lightroom, but when I'm exporting it or I'm sending it to a client, that means nothing. So what I want to do is I want to rename it. So what I do is you can create these custom, and I have one called custom dash preset or file name. So if I take out the custom, it puts untitled, but I could say the cat. Okay, and so now you can see down here, and it's going to give you an example. It's going to be, the file is going to be called the cat dash underscore LLP 4429. And you can get fancy with this. There's a lot of other things you can do here. This is the date. and I can create my own. Okay, so there's going to be a sequence. There's a whole bunch of ways to do this. So let's say if I come in here, I want to edit this. I can, these are other ways to create this. So this is the way it's doing it right now, okay? But I could come in and say, instead of the file name, I want to use the file name number suffix, okay? So if I create that, now it's gonna, I didn't put a dash in there. I should probably do that. Let's try this again, sorry. So here I want to put a dash right here. Okay. So now it's going to just drop off. It's going to drop the whole file name and just put the number, which is typically the way I'd probably want to do it. So if I were going to, so the way I would do this actually is, instead of putting the file name in here, I would take this out. Okay. And just put dash suffix insert. And so now it's going to be called the cat 4429. Because I don't need the LLP in there if I don't, most of the time. The other thing, this is really handy. I'm going to show you one fancy trick here. I'm showing you guys all my good stuff. Let's go back to the library. Let's go back to the file, my metadata, and there's something called, caption, large caption. Where's caption? Large caption. Okay, it's just a blank space. So if I put something in this caption, and we'll call this Bob Smith, okay, and I do this a lot when I'm doing portraits. So say I'm doing a lot of portraits or some kind of an event. I've got a bunch of people, and I need to name them. So what I'll do is I have an assistant write down the name along with the frame number. So they'll look at it and say, okay, 4429 or 426 is going to be Bob Smith. Okay, so put Bob Smith into the metadata. Great, no big deal. Now I know, so now I can find Bob Smith whenever I want. I know that's the image. But here's where it gets really cool. When I export this, I can have a preset called, I'll create a new one here. Let's see, we'll call it, is it custom? Custom, that's not it. Okay, so what we're going to do, yeah, so we'll go up here, we're going to edit, that's what we want to do. So what I'll do is I'll go up here, I'll delete this, and instead of saying custom name, I will put, guess what, the caption. Then I'll put dash and the file number, and look what happens. That now file is automatically going to be called Bob Smith -4429. So if I'm exporting 40 images from a portrait session, it's going to automatically put every person's name in that file name. I don't have to go back and rename them. I don't have to mess with them. It's going to put it in there. And now I have to put it in the metadata to begin with, but it's helpful anyway, because what happens is people will call me up 3 months later, hey, do you have Mary Jones's portrait? We need her photo. We lost it. Sure, no problem. I can search on Mary Jones, find her image really quickly, export it. But here, it automatically puts this into the name of the file. So when I'm exporting dozens of files, each person, so now when I send them to the client, they already know which file belongs to Bob Smith, which one belongs to Mary Jones. So. The other thing is, real quick here, you can export different file formats. Again, JPEG. PNG is going to be a better format than JPEG, by the way. It's not going to be as compressed. The file is going to be a little bigger. So if you're looking for better quality, go with a PNG. sRGB and RGB, I won't go into this now. You guys should be watching, know about my videos you've seen on where I've done already on this, talking about sRGB versus RGB. And then size. If you don't click resize, it's going to resize it as a full resolution, whatever this image was, 7,000 by whatever. But typically what I'll do is I'll say I'll do like a long image, and I'll say, okay, if I'm going to do this for the web site, it's going to be about 1,500. I want to set it to 72 DPI or pixels per inch. That's going to be my web version. And send it to them. And that's pretty much it. There's a bunch of other stuff I could show you guys, because I can come over here and create presets. Like I have a LinkedIn preset, and it automatically puts their name in there. It makes it an S, and look, it automatically makes it 300 by 300, which I know is the requirement for LinkedIn. So if I'm going print quality, I already have one already set up for RGB. It's going to be JPEG or PNG, 8-bit, high, sharpened, etc., etc. So whatever I can create as many of these presets as I want, and when I'm submitting an image to somebody, instead of going and entering all this stuff over and over again, all I got to do is click on this right here. All right. Whew. That's a lot of stuff. Why is my picture gone all wacky on me? I know it's kind of getting all... Oh, there we go. I'm back. It's kind of strange looking. It's kind of jittery. It looks to look like to me. Okay. Hopefully that was helpful to you guys. We didn't, it's just a ton of stuff, and it's really a great subject. It's a lot of fun. You can really get creative with this, and make your images really come alive. And again, the way I see it is, this is how you take your creativity and you expand it. You finish it, because that when I capture that, when I push the button on that camera, that's only a small portion. I may not know what I want to say about that image. I may want to look at that image later and go, like, for example, here's a technique that I use. Maybe it'll help you guys. If possible, I never ever look at the images right away. I'll take my card, I'll import them, I'll look at the images on the computer like I've just done, make sure they're there, and then if I can, I won't look at them for a week or two. And then what I've discovered about myself, at least, is I'm much more objective when I come back later and look at those images. But when I look at them right away, I'm like, I don't like that one. That's one. And I didn't even talk about ranking or rating or how you do that kind of stuff. Maybe we'll have to do another session. And most of you guys are in the founders members. That's where all the detail stuff's going to go anyway. But so the thing is that I will look at it a week later, because I'm much more objective when I look at that image, and I know I'm not going to be too critical. And maybe I'll look at an image I didn't think was very good, but later, a week later, I'm like, it's not too bad. Now that I look at it, I could crop it, or I could do this, and it really will work. So anyway, that's the deal on that. Next week, I think next week is fun. And your T-Bird, your daddy's T-Bird, I think that's isn't that fun? Isn't that the way it goes, Sue Ann? That's a, can't think of the group now. Gone blank here. Well, that ruined that whole joke, didn't it? Beach Boys is the name of the group. You guys probably have no idea who I'm talking about. Anyway, so next week I believe we're doing photo trivia. Always a lot of fun. I enjoyed putting that together. It's a lot of work, but you guys seem to enjoy it, and it's a really popular show. So next week we're going to be doing photo trivia, so be sure and check that out. And I guess that's pretty much about it for this week. It's been fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was beneficial. Yeah, thank you, T-Bird. That's it. Thank you, Sue Ann. See, it helps having other brain cells available, virtual brain cells, doesn't it? You need to buy a Val in-depth photo. Lightroom. You guys are great. I love it. So, yep. I don't know. Maybe that's what I should do. Allie, is do a Lightroom trivia session. That would be a good one. That's a good way to teach you guys how that thing would work. So anyway, all right. Hey, listen. Thanks very much. Appreciate you guys hanging in there, and we'll see you next week.